Good morning, this is Shelby Law with the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Wednesday, August 21st, 2019. We have a few impacts coming up in the next couple of days. First, for today, we're looking for some strong winds coming ahead of a cold front moving into the Pacific Northwest. These will be fairly short-lived and they'll occur late in the afternoon, but something to be looking at for western Idaho and northwest Nevada. Overnight, we're looking for some thunderstorms to move into the central Idaho mountains, occurring mainly in those overnight hours and early into Thursday morning. These storms will be a mix of wet and dry, but definitely could produce some new initial attack. We'll also see winds transition further east to east central Idaho and over southwest Utah and the Arizona Strip and far southeast Nevada. By Friday, the winds lighten up and we're not looking for any significant impacts. Yesterday was a sunny and dry day across the geographic area. And we continue to see a new initial attack popping up over much of the area. Yesterday it looks like we saw more fires over Utah and a larger one there on the Utah-Idaho border. Observed precipitation for the past 7 days has been basically nothing for the entire geographic area. The image on the right shows what we would normally see over the past 7 days for the middle of August. And this time of year, normally we are still seeing some of the influence from the monsoon with some of that moisture coming up and hitting the higher elevations of Utah at least, and then a little bit of precip there over the central Idaho mountains. And so we haven't seen any in the last 7 days. This has led to an increase in our fire danger indices, specifically ERC here we're looking at. These are some of the highest values we've seen all year, with many stations reporting above the 80th and 90th percentile in Utah and up into eastern Idaho. Those values will continue to rise. We may see them halt from rising over the next couple of days with that cool front moving in, but then early next week we'll warm up again and see those values pop back up. So a closer look at some of the values in our areas that have highest ERCs right now, including the mountains of western Idaho, where we'll see some of those thunderstorms overnight tonight. Those values are creeping up on normal for the time of year, which right now is generally the peak fire season for the central Idaho mountains. So conditions are ready to burn up there or carry some fire. And over northwest Utah, those values are above average for the time of year. This morning's satellite imagery shows dry conditions in place over much of the geographic area. We are looking for that trough to be moving into the Pacific Northwest today, and that will send the cold front into western Idaho overnight, bring some showers to the central Idaho mountains, and knock temperatures down a few degrees for a couple of days, Thursday and Friday, before we warm back up for the weekend. So for this afternoon, dry conditions continue for much of the geographic area, but with the cooler temperatures coming in, we will see the effects of that little cool front for Idaho and western Nevada. Here we're looking at those strong winds right along the front there in southeast Oregon and southwest Idaho and up into western Nevada as well. So those winds will come in. This is about 8 o'clock tonight. And then we're also looking for some precipitation to move into the central Idaho mountains overnight tonight. Mix of wet and dry storms, isolated dry lightning for sure. So we're highlighting that risk for tonight. By tomorrow afternoon, that trough will kind of quickly move off to the east, leaving some cooler temperatures and slightly higher relative humidities in its wake. We do have the high risk for lightning indicated on Thursday, but these thunderstorms are mainly going to occur in the early morning hours. We'll see some leftover winds over the southern Great Basin on Thursday and also eastern Idaho, but we're not highlighting for that because of the elevated relative humidities. So again, here we're expecting the winds along the Snake River Plain on Thursday afternoon, and then also across the Arizona Strip and southwest Utah. The precipitation image here is showing that precip all day on Thursday, including the early morning hours. And by Friday, we'll see dry conditions return to the Great Basin. Mild temperatures may continue across the north on Friday, but we'll begin to see some warming return to the west. Winds lighten up for Friday for the most part across the geographic area. And we'll see minimum relative humidities still somewhat elevated across the northern half of the geographic area, but across the south we're still seeing those single-digit minimum relative humidities. 3-day precipitation totals show a little bit of that precip coming into the central Idaho mountains overnight tonight and into Thursday morning. And we may see a few showers there in western Wyoming as well as that trough exits off to the east. And then Saturday into the first part of next week, we return to a warm and dry pattern. Here's Saturday. Sunday, we'll really see the drier air beginning to move back in. And warm and dry conditions persist Monday and into Tuesday. By midweek next week, we will begin to see a little bit of moisture possibly moving back up into the Great Basin. This could lead to some isolated dry thunderstorms for mainly Utah and Nevada, but possibly moving up into Idaho as well. So we'll be keeping a close eye on this evolving situation for midweek next week with returning moisture to the Great Basin. 7-day precip totals really just show that limited moisture coming to central Idaho and western Wyoming tonight, and then drying for the remainder of the period. The extended forecast taking us into the first few days of September, still calling for above normal temperatures across the geographic area, but we'll see a drying trend return to Idaho, and looks like maybe a little bit of southerly moisture returns to the desert southwest, and we'll see how much, if any of that, comes up into the Great Basin, possibly in the way of some isolated mixed wet dry thunderstorms. This concludes today's fire potential briefing. Please check back tomorrow for the latest updates.